Mew?
Boy, what could possibly be said about this place that hasn't already been said? Mew is the music section of the infamous anonymous image board site 4chan. While in principle the board was created to discuss music-related topics, find and review new albums, and post original works, in practice this all felt secondary to the real draw of Mew, the culture. A decade out of its peak relevance as a taste-making locus, it's hard to describe what navigating the boards was like at the time, how it lit up when government plates dropped, share threads, chart threads, shill threads, fuck K-pop threads. Is Skrillex dubstep or brostep, and what is brostep? Hey, this is actually pretty good, not cringe at all. Probably Tylo be chillin'. If you know, you know. For those who can't relate to anything I just said, the impact of this era of Mew can be felt today from the Flying Lotus copy pasta, Caveman SpongeBob, the entirety of Millen's career, this fucking banana. More generally, just about any online conversations about music or music criticism contain verbiage, memes, or posts that can be traced back to shithousery that was at one time unique to the board. But we're not here to eulogize Mew. Far from it. We're here to document 20 genres that were invented on the board. If you're cringing at the thought of mutant invented music subcultures imagining them to be shit, yup, they were shit alright. But the fact that Mew spawned output in this categorical paradigm at all is fascinating to me, and as I see it, the result of both board-specific conditions and trends in early 2010s music journalism. To address the board-specific conditions, you have to understand that Mew was a pseudo-hive mind. What I mean by that is that there was this conflicting dynamic where certain albums were incessantly debated and agonized over, while others like It Oats and In the Cock were uniformly lauded. But if there was one consistent aspect of the hive mind, it was how unabashed elitism was the norm. Your music that you want to talk about? Pleb shit in on. That album blows. Get Better Taste. Baby's First Ambient. But my music is patrish. No one is as smart and cultured as me because I listen to like fucking Good Morning, Good Night or something. Don't get me wrong, I love me some Onkyo, but that's what it was like. The constant posturing and social pressure would encourage users to seek out increasingly more obscure and esoteric stuff until you find yourself listening to literal washing machines. And as it applies to the creative output of artists on the board, there was a critical minority that didn't want to make just another bedroom chillwave project or add to the landfill of lo-fi hip-hop beats. These people instead invented niches for their art to exist in, reflecting how obscurity was currency on the board. The stylistic cubbyholes they created for their music were in most cases completely vapid, but it offered a new avenue to experience and communicate about art. These microgenres were more than the product of board influences though. They firmly fit into the music blogosphere of the early 2010s. A full treatment of this era of music is outside the scope of this video, but suffice to say that semi-ironic, hyper-specific genres of music were popping up everywhere at the time. Chillwave, witch house, sea-punk, vaporwave, and you can imagine each of these had their own pyramid of offshoots. This fragmentation of music classification led to a gold rush of sorts, a feeling that the next big microgenre was around the corner. And with a little luck, you, the anonymous user with a Bandcamp account, could make the next Echo Jams or Floral Shop and be the founder of a new online movement. In practice, though, almost none of these experiments took off. Someone would declare the birth of a new microgenre with certain rules and criteria, and maybe, if they were lucky, one or two people would be interested in the concept and contribute work. But occasionally, the genre would take off and capture the hearts and minds of anonymous posters for a short period of time, and potentially even escape the trenches of 4chan, spreading to the general normie populace. Here are 20 microgenres invented by Mew, listed chronologically. There's not so much information about this, but apparently there was a Mew microgenre called TREDGESTOMP from back in 2010, where users would just take songs, reverse them, and speed them up 300%. As you'll see with many of these pre-vaporwave genres, there was almost no extra musical aesthetic considerations, and genres are defined instead by process. There is a reference to a compilation called TREDGESTOMP 1 that I guess is lost media at this point, and there's a Mediafire link to My Bloody Valentine's Loveless but reversed with no speed mods. Since I couldn't find any TREDGESTOMP, I just made some here. Water bass is a genre that is referred to in the archive as likely originating at the beginning of 2012. To understand water bass, first you need to understand speed bass. Speed bass was an electronic music subgenre that evolved out of styles like hardcore, gabber, grindcore. It was really fast BPMs, samples flying all around, referential to hyperactive mid-2000s internet culture. All of the music was hosted on a now defunct site, speedbass.net. I think this Turbo Ted guy was the leader. At some point, users from speedbass.net created an in-joke genre called spit bass, which was like speed bass except you had to make it sound like shit. Specifically, the tracks needed to be 14 to 16 seconds, 8-bit, 8 kilohertz, and mono. There's a collection of these spit bass songs from 2010 on archive.org, and man, these songs are a trip.
Give you something to remember for the rest of your life.
Chop, break, cut, burn, I spit on your grave.
The story goes that someone on Mew decided to make the opposite of spit bass by basically stretching out tracks in Audacity, so essentially incompetent dark ambient, but they called it water bass. I haven't found any examples of water bass, but someone said that the artist Nano Cyborg Holocaust sounded close. In terms of the internet microgenre taxonomy, it's hard to deduce where water bass fits in because we don't have record of it even existing. But certainly spit bass came early enough that it's better understood as an isolated forum meme rather than being the product of the chillwave phenomenon. And in that sense, water bass likely has a similar distance from the other microgenres we'll be talking about. In the mid-1900s, the color field painting style emerged in New York City. Color field was related to abstract expressionism and differed from its predecessors like action painting, where in action painting the process behind the art was brought to the forefront. In color field, the color of the monolithic forms became the primary subject. But even in this context, where basically all the visual information was reduced to color, these color field paintings are still able to communicate emotion and feeling. It was this painting style that an anonymous user on Mew took as a jumping off point to invent a music microgenre in May of 2012, TONEFIELD. Now, the essence of TONEFIELD was to replace the colors in color field with pure sine tones, but the genre came with like an algorithmic description of how to create a proper TONEFIELD track.
1. Song must be mono. 2. Song start with totally silent part with at least 1 second or with a tone with at least 1 second. 3. Song ends or continue with a new silent part with at least 1 second or with a tone with at least 1 second. This happen without fade in or fade out. 4. Go back to 3.
Though the RBT archive doesn't go so far back, we can piece together that a Bandcamp label called Wavelength 2 housed 14 of these TONEFIELD submissions from the first month of the page's creation. After this initial flurry of activity, the TONEFIELD Magna Carta was posted sporadically in reference to other Mew microgenres. However, there was a brief revival attempt in 2014. Although TONEFIELD is continually referenced as a microgenre in the archive, because of the ease of creation and similar writing styles in the post, there's a strong possibility that all of this TONEFIELD propaganda was disseminated by a single actor. The Wavelength 2 Bandcamp page was updated most recently in 2020. So what do I think about TONEFIELD? It's dumb. It doesn't work. Mostly because a 440Hz sine tone doesn't convey the same emotional subtext the way that red might express anger or blue serenity. Furthermore, TONEFIELD is over-constrained. In color field, there is actual artistry behind the layout of colors on the canvas and interesting dynamics with the kinds of paints used. In TONEFIELD, the only parameters you can control are the frequencies and duration of the sine waves. A good comparison to what I think would be a truer audio representation of color field would be something like Sachiko M's sine wave solo, which builds sparse Jordan compositions from pure tones, but there are slight dynamics. There's craftsmanship in the arrangement similar to the structure of color field paintings. At the very least, when she does make an extreme minimal album like Bar Sachiko, which is a half hour of pure tone and the next half hour two tones, it's not as guilelessly transparent in its motives as TONEFIELD is. These TONEFIELD songs are like audio from the WebDriver videos without any of the intrigue, because you know exactly what the creative process is. It's just some dude on Mew who wanted to make a new microgenre. Even though I personally believe that TONEFIELD missed the mark stylistically, I still appreciate its experimental nature, and compared with the other microgenres I'll talk about, the source material is certainly more adventurous. Also too, the Wavelength 2 Bandcamp page itself is pretty ominous. I imagine someone from outside 4chan coming to this page, faced with the minimal album art, and then completely bewildered by the tonally bare bones music. But at the end of the day, Mew inventing a bastardization of Onkyo is par for the course. Metroco was the first Mew microgenre to emerge as an earnest response to the success of chillwave, seapunk, and vaporwave. It should be emphasized to the modern vaporwave listener that while chillwave and seapunk ultimately disappeared from online discourse and vaporwave continues to grow and evolve more than a decade after its inception, at this time in late 2012, these three genres and Witch House were seen as almost serial editions of a microgenre lottery, which would continue to bestow attention on the most absurd genre concepts. Also, and I think this fact has eluded vaporwave historians for quite a while, one of the key catalysts in the explosion of vaporwave's popularity was a coordinated attempt to spam Floral Shop on Mew in mid-November 2012. Conventional sources cite Adam Harper's July 2012 article as the prime instigator for the genre's growth. However, I think it's more accurate to view the article as but one event in a series that propelled the runaway train of vaporwave. After Harper's article, tripcode users like DNA on DNA on DNA spread vaporwave albums on Mew share threads, taking a keen interest in Floral Shop especially. On November 10th, Rihanna performed on SNL with a visual set generously borrowing from seapunk iconography, thrusting the microgenre into the public discourse for what would end up being basically the last time. 5 days later, on the 15th, Mew was canvassed with Floral Shop memes. It's unknown who was responsible for this barrage of posts, whether it was an individual or a group, though I do have my hunches, but it was fucking non-stop for a few days. Just to give context about the scale of the campaign, before November 15th, 2012, there were 209 posts containing the text Floral Shop. In the 3-day period between November 15th and November 17th, there were 161 posts. We can run similar comparisons with other search terms. Before November 15th, there were 103 OPs with the text Vaporwave. In the same 3-day period between the 15th and the 17th, there were 92. The abrupt spike in conversation about this new genre and why the fuck there's a Roman bust on the cover was inescapable over that weekend. Furthermore, because of the context the album was brought up in, discourse around Floral Shop and other vaporwave projects abruptly transitioned from respectful interest to outright memery. This single weekend solidified the awkward and controversial reputation that Floral Shop holds to this day. On November 16th, during the initial blitz of Floral Shop spamming, a user started a thread titled Mew Invents a Scene, with rather exacting demands on responders. The anonymous poster listed 5 criteria for the new scene: name, aesthetics, cultural references, musical sound, and clothing style. Fucking imagine mutants going outside. In context, this thread was both an attempt to reclaim the board from the Floral Shop invasion and to replicate the meme magic that Vaporwave had achieved in a few short days by combating vapor spam with this new microgenre of Mew's choice spam. After a few suggestions, a user who would later identify themselves as Metro Bro posted the parameters of his new genre called Metroco. Summarizing this, Metroco is like a 90s nostalgia version of Burial's bleak urban fixation with like video game samples, I guess. Reading this vision document, personally, it just feels like an amalgamation of Metro Bro's interests blended in a heterogeneous mess. And not that this is unusual for microgenres, but especially for Metroco, it seems like defining the visual aesthetic took precedence over fleshing out the musical style. The only concrete example posted was Clive Tanaka's debut album. However, people clearly vibed with the detailed description of Metroco and lended their support for the genre. Less than 2 hours after the initial post, Metro Bro starts the first Metroco general. This first thread is unusual because there are both boons and banes to the proliferation of the genre. On the positive side, Metro Bro used his elaborate manifesto as the OP, which gave Anons quite a lot of visual and cultural inspiration to build off of. However, Metro Code still did not have the sound pinned down, so the first half of the thread ended up being Anons posting links asking, is this Metro Code? And Metro Bro, the Oracle, would be like, sort of. Furthermore, Metro Bro refused to make any music, so people were just left to fill in the gaps themselves. Although Bro did explicitly reference the track Dissociative Identity from the video game Killer 7 as the best audio representation of Metro Co. As the thread went on, users graduated from posting references to developing their own tracks. The first was by an artist going by Goldleaf Table on a track called Your Isolation from World Events, which features a sample of a dude fearmongering about the Philippine Communist Party over a slow, sparse drum beat.
That is the most progressive, productive, and political force in the Philippines. It is true that a minority class, especially only the party which represents it, cannot win.
Someone else named Pencil Eater was posting tracks on SoundCloud, and another person, Night Chase, posted some tracks that got the express approval of Metro Bro. Here's their track Headlight Rain. The early efforts were these kind of melancholy synth-heavy type beats that wouldn't be out of place as like late 2000s ringtones. Metro Co was not without its detractors, however. I think the most astute criticism of the genre came from a Tripcode user named Direfts, who had this to say.
I hope you guys realize you're all doing this in the most try-hard way imaginable, assuming any of you are serious. I mean, sure, it's fun and creative and we're all bored, but if your overly rigidly defined aesthetic finally breaks out of /mu/, this thread is still in the archives forever, and you all look like a bunch of fake who are already trying to write the Wikipedia article on your movement before it even exists.
These critical voices would only become louder in the following threads, saying that Metro Co was a transparent, spammy response to the Vaporwave spam, that it wasn't that different from Vaporwave anyways, that microgenres are stupid and unnecessary ways to manufacture distinction in music. And these arguments would devolve in the responses, with another big theme of answering the question, is this all a joke? By the end of the first day, a label Metrophone was created. There were Facebook and SoundCloud groups, and several artists were contributing, with a group called Juch seeming to have the most positive feedback, incorporating experimental electronic elements and referencing shortwave radio technology like the buzzer station UVB76. Here's their track Dead Hand Station. For the first week, everything seemed to be going great. Artists were converging in the threads, bouncing all kinds of ideas off of each other about physical releases, poetry, compilations, and after the vapor spam stopped invading the threads, it was kind of peaceful. People were really excited about participating in the community, and unlike the early vaporwave scene where people were high-key sociopathic about promoting their work, after the initial 2-day imperative of combating vapor spam died, the Metrocore artists were just vibing in their generals, giving each other positive feedback and expressing excitement about the future of the genre. Then it just sort of died. There's no discrete event that ended the experiment. People just stopped talking about it. Metrocode generals could hardly break double-digit posts. For reference, there were 1,232 posts with Metroco in the first 2 weeks of the genre before December 1st, 2012. In the 10 years since, there have been 1,497. Metro Bro stopped posting after the first 2 days, saying this several months later.
I deeply regret coming up with Metroco. It was a joke, you people.
The Vapor Scourge died down, the artist moved on, and despite like 10 albums coming out in the first week, the Metrophone page hasn't updated since. I look at Metroco as being a noble experiment that was doomed to fail for a few reasons. 1, Metroco was hard to define. 2, the music was made in less than a week and that was reflected in the quality. 3. It was made as a bargain brand response to Vaporwave, which had better music, more music, and an indefatigable meme culture. 4. There was too much emphasis on the subculture and not enough on the music. And 5. Most importantly, it burned out too fast. Keeping the comparison with Vaporwave, the SPF 420 turntable group had been chatting for years and honed their craft long before their moment in the spotlight. The MetroCo group was producing on the fly and couldn't deliver a captivating product before the artists got bored. However, the fact that MetroCo even got off the ground for a week is an achievement in its own right. Revisiting the thread that it was birthed out of, some of the other genre nominees like Space Tech, Airpunk, Fieldcore, and Hyperwave all had positive feedback but never went anywhere. Metro Bro, by sheer force of will, actualized his dream genre to reality. And if he's out there watching this, I hope he doesn't feel like it was a waste. Standing toe-to-toe with Vaporwave for a week is cool as shit. Also, Juch made a MetroCo EP in 2017. Go check it out. Here is the most successful microgenre pioneer by Mew, one that most probably don't realize it originated from 4chan in the first place. MALLSOFT is a subgenre of Vaporwave, Vaporwave itself being a microgenre of sampled electronic music that crystallized into an earnest subculture built upon hazy memories of 90s technology and art. Since Vaporwave facilitated this anti-capitalist ideology by satirically warping Muzak and old advertising assets, it's not surprising that abandoned shopping malls became a motif for the genre. Cemeteries of consumerism, once filled with rabid shoppers and bored teens, now lie dormant only to be permeated with reverberated fight-for-fighting songs. It's the perfect match, and we can see the shopping mall enter the Vaporwave lexicon as early as Hantasi's Vacant Places album from September of 2012. Although this is clearly recognizable today as a prototypical MALLSOFT release, the actual genre was not codified until December 28, 2012, in this Mew thread. The thread opens by declaring that MALLSOFT is now a genre, as it was named by the CAPTCHA system, and OP asks other users to define its parameters. Some users posit bands that remind them of shopping malls like John Mayer, Coldplay, Neon Trees, but there is one notable poster who declares that they will make a MALLSOFT song, that MALLSOFT will be a great new genre, and their song will have single-handedly birthed the movement. In this case, this brazen anonymous poster was correct. 20 posts into the thread, a Mediafire link appears, with a track labeled as YSU7D7DH.mp3. The reaction was immediate. This will be a common theme in these microgenres that achieve some level of traction. If the genre is defined first, it's important that the concept can be quickly translated into audio so that people have something to react to. And this is exactly what YSU7D7DH achieved. The track features ethereal pads over a slowed, reverberated, and slightly glitchy pop sample. While the track skips now and even at the time don't conform to the MALLSOFT program, the foundations were laid and the motive was clear. Make music that literally sounds like the massive reverberations of an empty shopping mall, and pair that audio with similarly emotive artwork. Simple, easily reproducible, and at the time topical. The rest of the thread was filled with fervor over MALLSOFT as a putative next big microgenre of 2013. More tracks were created, including one by famous poster Tripfriend, identification of antecedents such as GTA mall music and Hantasi's Vacant Spaces, and debate over the accompanying philosophy of the genre. And when I say debate, I mean people would just arbitrarily declare meaning behind MALLSOFT. One anon wrote a fake Pitchfork excerpt about the genre, another attributed this circular post-irony logic. Basically, MALLSOFT was a tub of Play-Doh ready to be formed into whatever Anonymous desired. And at their most hopeful, Anons yearned for MALLSOFT to become more than just the Vaporwave subgenre it eventually became, but rather the definitive 2013 update on the futility of internet music classification. Immediately after the initial samples were posted, users galvanized around a central task of creating a compilation for this new genre. While the compilation referenced in these early days, as far as I could tell, never materialized, a lively SoundCloud group shared and produced tracks, daily generals were posted on the boards, and subreddit and Facebook groups were created. While a few early EPs were released on Bandcamp, it seems that the main vehicle of creation in these first few months were the SoundCloud singles. In April, though, Hologram Plaza by Disconscious was released, cementing itself right away as the definitive MALLSOFT album. During this time, there was an ideological struggle between onlookers conflating the genre with the vapor movement, and the originator striving to present MALLSOFT as its own unique thing. By June, however, it seemed as though the fervor behind MALLSOFT had completely dissipated, this lack of activity correlating with a nadir on the vaporwave front as well, in the wake of Vectroid and Internet Club moving on from the genre they popularized 2 years prior. Furthermore, vaporwave producers not necessarily affiliated with the OG MALLSOFT crew began blanket tagging their releases with the MALLSOFT label, and instead of boosting the visibility of the genre, it ended up paradoxically dragging down MALLSOFT with vaporwave, an outcome particularly irksome to the crowd that wanted MALLSOFT to achieve independence from vaporwave. For a time, it seemed MALLSOFT would fade into obscurity as a noble experiment which fell victim to the curse of the microgenre. However, that's not really what ended up happening. Though it was, as some perceived, unfortunate that MALLSOFT was tied into the sinking ship that was vaporwave in mid-2013, by the end of the year there was a resurgence of activity in the scene, and subsequently MALLSOFT was given a new opportunity to survive as a subgenre of vapor. This ended up being crystallized with the inclusion of MALLSOFT in the infamous vaporwave subgenre infograph. From there, MALLSOFT was just kind of accepted as an established offshoot of vaporwave, most not realizing its origins as an attempt at a completely distinct scene. Today, most people point to Cat System Corp's Palm Mall or HKE's Yes We're Open as important releases in the genre, but as far as I can tell, MALLSOFT lives on less as a subgenre and more as an influence for this kind of extremely high-pass, spacious brand of vaporwave. And it's funny that in recent years, one may understand liminal spaces and the backrooms as like a creepy facelift of the MALLSOFT aesthetic. So why did MALLSOFT succeed where these other genres failed? I'd argue it didn't. I'd argue that MALLSOFT in its original pure conception suffered the same natural life cycle of all other microgenres. People just lose interest and move on from scenes with hyper-specific parameters. However, it's ironic that vaporwave, a genre which MALLSOFT attempted to become the antithesis of, eventually swallowed MALLSOFT up and repurposed it as a subgenre. And in this new role, I think it's clear to see why it works, because the mall and its accompanying audio universe is the manifestation of all of the ideals promoted by vaporwave. I'll give you a spoiler right now, the rest of these genres are fucking stupid, but they have varying degrees of hilarity and incompetence. On January 13th of 2013, a user starts a thread with this post.
I was bored and created these for a microgenre I made up in my head. I wonder what FRUITPUNK would sound like.
And dumps a slew of other CGI fruit art. Where Metroco was 100% sincere and MALLSOFT was partially ironic, hiding behind a veneer of sincerity, the FRUITPUNK OP just wanted to flesh out the idea as an out-and-out gaffe on the likes of Vaporwave and C-Punk. What OP did not expect was Anons pouring into the thread, sculpting the genre, and in a half hour creating the first FRUITPUNK track. This track by Hollywise Media, which was a remix of the Wiggles song about fruit, is unfortunately lost media at this point, but people dug it apparently. The rest of the thread was fucking wild. Somebody posted screenshots of a children's book with some insanely inappropriate shit that coincidentally had characters with fruit heads. Some people started declaring allegiance to the Veggie Gang, and FRUITPUNKers were calling them Veggie Nazis, and someone made a DJ Khaled diss track against the Veggie Nazis. Someone made a raw meat rap, and then all the food groups joined the turf war. Pizza, cheese, grains. This thread is so emblematic of old school 4chan humor, where people would just hop in on a joke without missing a beat. Now, as far as the actual sound of FRUITPUNK, there weren't a lot of tracks to begin with, and many of these tracks are lost, so we'll never know. At the beginning, people wanted it to sound like ultra hyper C-Punk with more tropical influences like steel drums. This FRUITPUNK demo by Hotman is more like a sludgy vaporwave. Puerto Rican guy Fresas y Quinoa made an album about fruit cereal that sounds like someone shoved a speaker up their asshole and started playing Skeleton. I high-key like this one. For the most part though, people gave up the idea of actually creating fruit punk music and instead made graphic art to spread the meme. And honestly, some of it is pretty dope, though personally I think they didn't branch out enough. There should have been more tropical fruit like dragon fruit and durian, and less grocery stores shit like 3D Fruit of the Loom. In any case, I think the reception to fruit punk was almost uniformly positive, and it was a fun Mew in-joke that people would sporadically conjure in the future. As an immediate response to Fruit Punk, 3 days later on January 16th, someone made a thread with this GIF and declared the new Mew microgenre, FATWAVE. As they put it,
FATWAVE is a new movement in music defined by its fat sound. It sounds fat and greasy and makes you want to take a shower after listening to it. The FATWAVE aesthetic consists of fast food chain, junk food, and TV dinner logos, all reappropriated in new ways.
Immediately, posters had philosophical disagreements about the new genre. One user thought FATWAVE should become a subgenre of MALLSOFT by just focusing on food courts and using minimal atmospheric sampling. But DJ Roswell of all people disagreed and asserted FATWAVE should be maximal. 25 minutes later, Roswell posted the first FATWAVE track, Pineapple Big Mac.
Lettuce and hot grilled pineapple. Beef, cheese, lettuce and hot grilled pineapple. Beef, lettuce and hot grilled pineapple.
I don't even know what to say. I'm not sure that the Big Crush sample reminds me of obesity, but I do feel like I need to clean my ears with a Q-tip, so there's that. Two other people, Max Burr and Stephen B. Brule, made some FATWAVE. Here are their tracks.
Can I persuade you to take a sandwich with you, sir? I'll get drive-through.
The first FATWAVE thread followed the same beats as the Fruit Punk thread. People made subgenres like Diabetes Wave, declared proto-FATWAVE content like Honey Boo Boo and Massive Attack, generally made puns about obesity-induced conditions. But there was virtually no creative output other than a few Roswell tracks, pictures of greasy cheeseburgers, and overweight people in mobility scooters. And the jokes just weren't funny to me personally. What's interesting though is that although Fruit Punk seemed to attract more attention at its inception, FATWAVE fared slightly better as a long-term recognizable meme, albeit a niche one. At the end of the day, I think FATWAVE's lasting legacy is as a glimpse of DJ Roswell's pre-Nothing Is Real output and connection to Mew culture. On September 2nd, 2013, a user starts a Create Your Own Genre thread to replace Vaporwave. Unlike the thread from the previous year that birthed MetroCo, this thread had significantly less imperative, and the popularity of Vaporwave was in a lull for most of 2013. Responses at the start of the thread are either poorly conceived genre titles or outright belligerent against the forcing of another microgenre. At this time, Vaporwave, MetroCo, and MALLSOFT even were seen by a sizable portion of the board populace as annoying force genres that would never go anywhere, and that Vaporwave fans were just dragging its carcass around. In retrospect, the Vaporwave posters at this time were actually stewards of a slightly dormant genre until it exploded in 2014. But truly, at the time, they were sneered at as self-promoting talentless hacks. In any case, in this September 2nd thread, a user creates DESERTWAVE, which would feature
tight plucked strings, tuned percussion plus drum machines, low harmonic drones, wind samples, Arab text.
The positive response was almost immediate, and less than 2 hours later, the first DESERTWAVE thread was created. It seemed like the aesthetic actually had some potential. People made connections to what could be considered proto-desert wave, like Muslim Gauze, some Brian Eno stuff, my man Mahmoud Awad, dry desert level music, Fatima Al-Qadiri, music from Saharan cell phones, and Anand started churning out some very intriguing artwork. It seemed like this was a big difference between desert wave and what came out of the MetroCo MALLSOFT era. That desert wave started with the sound first and had immediate access to a library of previous work that they could attempt to replicate and transform. Unlike with MetroCo, for instance, where there was a lot of confusion as to what was or wasn't the sound. Conversations about the underlying philosophy didn't get as far, however, aside from vague insistence that the music should reflect isolation in the desert. To be honest, it's not surprising. If we're being cynical, the desert wave people just kind of swapped the kanji for vaporwave with Arabic text and called it a day. Not much emerged from the desert wave movement, which only lasted about 2 days. Someone named Young Heroine produced the first official track. There were other tracks from Botfire, Boys with Hydraulic Arms, Bon Voyage, and Sad Desert, who I thought had the best take on the genre. But this was kind of it for the music. Subsequent desert wave threads were met with open hostility at the microgenre, and overall responses dwindled after 3 days. I find this interesting that desert wave was met with such disdain in the generals, when more spam genres like MetroCo and MALLSOFT were mostly left to die alone. Reading the threads though, there were definitely some desert wave posters that were actively baiting skeptics and feeding off the arguments. And I think this was the main reason for the accelerated demise of the genre. These desert wave posters had no fucking chill. The art was actually well received. The music and concept were arguably more interesting than in MetroCo or MALLSOFT, but there was a disconnect between the goal of fostering a dedicated community and the promotion tactics that had more in common with the obvious joke microgenres like FRUITPUNK and FATWAVE. And not that there was a tolerance of microgenres at this point in 2013. In fact, exasperation with vaporwave was at an all-time high, but still, the momentum from the first general was totally killed in the second and third generals by clogging up threads with arguments rather than content. On the plus side though, that New World Disciples album by Desert Sands of Warm at Night is fantastic, although not post-desert wave. Although probably not considered post-desert wave. There's another side of the desert wave story though, and that's the microgenre SPOOKYCORE. Now to understand SPOOKYCORE, you have to understand the spooky meme from 2012, which was basically like this tongue-in-cheek feigning of terror at comical Halloween tier frights like skeletons, ghosts, jack-o'-lanterns. The idea of Anons being spooked by Scooby-Doo shit when they're on a website that has gore is kind of the point of the joke. So SPOOKYCORE had been one of these joke genre descriptors since around September 2012, but it didn't truly start until just a half hour after the invention of Desert Wave with this post.
Come on guys, you know that making a micro-genre that's a bit spooky would be a hit. You know, do the whole Dead Man's Bones thing where they took a page out of the 50s and used Halloween themes, but made them upbeat and cute. Just do that with some shitty electronica knockoff. So it's not dark like Witch House, it's more like the updated Monster Mash.
And with this post, a dichotomy was set. If Desert Wave was intended as the new iteration on Vaporwave, a microgenre with some semblance of artistic merit, SPOOKYCORE was the meme foil that didn't take itself seriously at all. While the Desert Wave thread was unearthing music from the Middle East, the SPOOKYCORE Anons were posting skeleton gifs, haunted house music, writing raps about spiders and cobwebs. Even without considering the music made under the SPOOKYCORE tag, this divergence in attitude is why SPOOKYCORE would ultimately have more success than Desert Wave. The Desert Wave artists would combat microgenre fatigue with just unpalatable defensiveness, and this would dominate the candor of the threads as the initial excitement subsided. With SPOOKYCORE though, there was nothing to be defensive of. If someone expressed negativity in a SPOOKYCORE general, people would just crack jokes in response like, "Oh, you spooked it on?" The no fun allowed crowd has no power in a group of people who just don't give a shit. And these SPOOKYCORE MFers were here for one reason only, to meme some creepy crawlies. Also contributing to the relative longevity of SPOOKYCORE was that there was an end date in mind, with Halloween being just 2 months away. If SPOOKYCORE could just make it to the end of October and have an epic Halloween bash, it might just stick around for a little while. Another part of what made SPOOKYCORE promising was that the expectations for challenging musical convention and inventiveness were non-existent. People just wanted to hear theremins and monster noises over trap beats, and this could easily be delivered in 10 minutes on FL Studio. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the SPOOKYCORE threads seem to have more dead links than any of the other microgenres, but we do have some surviving documents. Someone who went by 420 Spooky 7 Me did a mashup of Andrew Gold's iconic song and Rack City.
What's that on that beat?
Another character, Electro Spinner, made a spooky joint called Steinimation. Also, Print Manager made the first and only SPOOKYCORE music video. One interesting aspect of SPOOKYCORE compared to the other microgenres was that people did not seem to clamor for original content as much, and they were content with just sharing proto-SPOOKYCORE and spooky memes. This meant less infighting about the parameters of the genre. SPOOKYCORE eventually fell off after about 5 days, as opposed to DESERTWAVE, which kind of disintegrated by the second thread. SPOOKYCORE unfortunately didn't get a boost on Halloween, but it kind of lived on as both a fond memory of this bizarre week in September of 2013, and as a generic descriptor for any music that had paranormal references. I think SPOOKYCORE was a unique microgenre because it combined the blatant irreverence of FRUITPUNK and FATWAVE with the productivity of a more serious effort like Metroco. And in that way, the relative success of SPOOKYCORE reflected board sentiment toward microgenres a year after the initial wave of vapor spam. People were fucking sick of it. They were tired of the Bandcamp self-promotion, the low-effort vaporwave posturing as highbrow, subversive art, the endless bickering about what was or wasn't acceptable in the microgenre, the desperate anons attempting to replicate the popularity of vaporwave and witch house by spamming their own goofy microgenre ideas. To many, the microgenre program was a drain on music discussion and creation. So if there was going to be a new microgenre, it may as well correct the pretension of the others and just be a fun meme. And that's what SPOOKYCORE was. The Palangis were a fictional musical duo from the country of Suriname created by an anonymous poster on 4chan. The concept of their only release, a 2013 album Tambourines and Drum Machines #1 electro group, was to LARP as someone with no contextual understanding of modern electronic music and recreate electropop with the little knowledge they have. The music runs the gamut from chiptune to trance to really claustrophobic electro. One part of the album that resonated with me was when the synths come in during 2007 Makeout Champ. On the whole though, this album is so fucking off-putting to me. I don't know what it is. It's like the compositions are amateurish and the sound fonts are weirdly static, but you can tell there's effort and attention put into the arrangements. It's electronic music from a past time that doesn't feel nostalgic. It's just emotionally vacant to me. This shit creeps me out more than Farside Virtual. But I think most of all, the whack-ass pixelated Captain Planet, asymmetrically placed on the empty white cover, plucks a nerve in my brain. Why the fuck does this thing make me so pressed? Okay, so why am I talking about this album? Palangi Man, as I'll call him from here on out, first posted this album to Mew on July 27th, 2013. He came back several months later on February 25th of 2014 and posted his Bandcamp link a total of 17 times between the 25th and the 27th. He first posted his links in the Bandcamp threads and then got more adventurous and started a few viraling threads with his album. A big no-no on the board. Ugh, who would do that, right? Looking through these posts, Palangi Man only received 2 small pieces of feedback during his advertising binge, and clicking through them really emphasizes the futility of seeking out feedback through those Bandcamp threads. In those days, to get eyes on your music, you had to post your shit constantly and interact with the community, or get really lucky with an eye-catching cover or description. I mean, what's changed, right? But clearly the offhand, not my cup of tea, but it's cool comment was not cutting it for Palangi Man. Palangi Man returned in April and started experimenting with the presentation of his album, sometimes highlighting its fictitious origin from Suriname, inventing different description tags like DDR wave or vapor trance. He seemed to be getting marginally more attention, but I have a sneaking suspicion this is just same posting. It wasn't until June 7th that he was able to dupe Mew into paying attention to his album. In a thread asking what the newest genre of music is, Palangi Man made this post.
FLASHWAVE. Can't believe this genre hasn't caught on yet. Kind of a deconstruction of the trance Euro dance genre. Uses the aesthetic from early internet memes, some 8-bit art, 2000s Euro trance. Example.
And in an instant, the FLASHWAVE genre was born. What was initially created as an eclectic electronic album was now being recontextualized in the microgenre framework as like an ironic Newgrounds E-Bombs World update to the Vaporwave schema. Memories of Animutations and that Jib Jab Bush Carey cartoon. There was undoubtedly some intrigue in the concept, but right away there was a problem. People were catching on to Palangi Man's ruse. Where in the previous microgenres, the concept was invented before the music, because Tambourines and Drum Machines was released in January 2013, it was pretty transparent that FLASHWAVE was birthed as a Mew-specific marketing technique for the album. This caused onlookers to become uncooperative and hostile, basically speedrunning the life cycle of the microgenre to dead on arrival. Palangi Man would continue to consistently post FLASHWAVE threads for the next 2 days, and sporadically for the next year, but these were extremely poorly received. No other FLASHWAVE was made, as far as I can tell, but there were a few albums on Bandcamp that incidentally contained the tag, which Palangi Man would attempt to pass off as a scene. One of these was an album meet_football.jpg by Breakcastle 101, a short, bit-crushed hip-hop EP. FLASHWAVE is a weird microgenre case. In some ways, I'm very surprised that the microgenre as a self-promo scam wasn't properly executed until mid-2014. While I'm sure this happened in the past to lesser degrees of notoriety, what makes FLASHWAVE different is that there was an underlying sense of confusion after the initial swell. Unlike with some of these other brief microgenres, FLASHWAVE died so quickly that there was no collective memory of the incident, and future anons would question whether the genre even existed at all. Might as well mention this here, but Palangi Man mentioned that the Palangi's project was a break from their more serious acid house techno stuff, so there's a chance he's still floating around out there somewhere. Also, Palangi Man had a YouTube channel called Yanamaru with some Palangi's tracks, chipmunk songs, and a video of their friends snorting the sour stuff off of Sour Patch Kids. On June 15th, 2014, an anonymous poster started a thread asking for the next annual meme genre in the continuum from chillwave in 2009 to meme rap in 2013. A user responded with a fictional list that included cockcore and in 2017, OCEANGRUNGE. Now, it's not hard to see how this is a riff off of C-Punk, but people were definitely intrigued by the concept. 2 hours later, an artist you may be familiar with, Sea of Dogs, created the first OCEANGRUNGE track, a remix of Nirvana's In Bloom titled Come Unto Me. This track is fucking crazy, man. Think of all the first tracks we've reviewed for the other microgenres. Now compare it to this. Come Unto Me is compositionally pretty simple. It's a slow build over the stretched out warped Nirvana sample with these phased and echoed drums kicking in. It's simple, but it's so fucking heavy. The drums pounding over the Nirvana sample sound like waves crashing down over a drowning Kurt Cobain. Ocean Grunge was the first of these microgenres where instead of the concept being the impetus for gathering a community, Sea of Dogs track was so good that it spawned a fan base straight away. But is that really what happened? Because after the genre creation thread turned into ground zero for the birth of Ocean Grunge, the praise was met with accusations of viraling. Now, reading through this thread with my unparalleled discernment, I think that for the most part, reception was above board, especially because the Ocean Grunge concept had positive feedback before Sea of Dogs posted their track. The critics may have been right though, because the supposed Ocean Grunge enthusiasts didn't spill over into a general for their new genre. In fact, when Sea of Dogs finished their EP called Weak Waves and posted a thread about it, there were only 13 replies. Discussion of Ocean Grunge was mostly limited to the Vaporwave generals thereafter. And even in the Vaporwave threads of all places, there was zero tolerance for Ocean Grunge spamming. Reading through the Ocean Grunge mentions at this time, it's so obvious that just about every post is spam from Sea of Dogs. Correction, Sea of Dogs claims it was someone else spamming Weak Waves, and I believe them. You'll see why. Ocean Grunge had no infrastructure. There wasn't cultural context, philosophy behind the genre, even a roadmap for what it was. Ocean Grunge was just one album and a handful of hopeful marketing attempts. What came next was potentially some of the most unhinged shit to happen in Vaporwave history. In the early morning of August 10th, 2014, the second ever Ocean Grunge album drops, Ocean Death by Poseidon and Chains. Unlike Sea of Dogs album, which had texture and percussion, this thing is an amorphous mess that sounds like it's been Paul stretched to oblivion. The album is promoted by a thread on Mew, but this thread is just very unnatural. When you read through enough 4chan threads, not proud of that by the way, you get used to cues in the discourse. The barrage of ideas and insults, the memes and the chaos. This thread is not like that at all. In fact, the first half of the thread reads like an interview with Poseidon and Chains. Just listen to this.
What were your main inspirations for the genre?
The Sea of Dogs ep, linked near the top. Also a general fan of new metal and ambient/drone music which came into play and makes my own album a little different from Sea of Dogs version. The darkness of the album title cover. Artist name
Would the addition of Sea Punk influences help or hinder Ocean Grunge?
Vaporwave is a good influence. Pretty much where this idea has come from, but Sea Punk would be a shitty influence.
What do you think about the ideological implications of Vaporwave and Ocean Grunge?
I think the whole purpose of Ocean Grunge is to musically allude to this godless age we find ourselves in now. We are lost at sea, and we're not even crying out to the sky for help anymore because all hope is gone, and we have accepted our fate.
No one fucking talks like this. Rather than an energized community generating content for a new microgenre, the Ocean Grunge framework was developed by Poseidon and Chains himself. The ocean is big and dark, God is dead, you're hopeless and lost to sea, and you have to wear blue flannels or else you're doing it wrong. Users who spotted the shilling from a mile away came in to offer criticism, but Poseidon and Chains only doubled down in response. This thread was only the beginning of a tsunami, of Ocean Grunge spam. That day, on August 10th, the Ocean Grunge subreddit was created, a Tumblr was created, 2 other albums by Nephthys, Zero, and Ocean of Sorrows drop that, if my tinfoil hat is on tight enough, sounds suspiciously like Poseidon and Chains. And the Ocean Grunge Essentials chart is created with a total of 4 albums, the only Ocean Grunge albums in existence. Just to give you an idea of the magnitude of the spam, until August 10th, there were 133 posts containing Ocean Grunge. On the day of August 10th, there were 266 posts. This aggressive viraling of the genre would continue at a rate of around 500 mentions per month until the end of January 2015, after which the posting dropped off dramatically, and by 2016 the genre was dead. I can't possibly track all of these posts and ascertain which ones are genuine versus spam, but clicking around you can just tell that most of the mentions are the latter. The funny thing is that you can also tell that it's all coming from the same party too, because they never posted from midnight to noon server time, and the posting was concentrated between 1 PM and 5 PM. The short-lived threads, the same memes, the same questions. For 6 months, Mew was inundated with non-sequitur references to Ocean Grunge. But it wasn't all spam, and I think that's the interesting part. There were some artists outside the core group of promoters who engaged with the microgenre. On August 14th, DJ Roswell made an Ocean Grunge album called Sludge Dread. Another artist who went by Gorgeous Gorgias made an album called Oceanographer No. 15, and I'm inclined to believe they weren't part of the core spamming group because they mentioned producing hip-hop for years beforehand and are active on another Bandcamp page making beats. Also, people were getting roped into the Ocean Grunge web from Tumblr and Reddit as well, so it's hard to filter who was genuinely interacting with the genre from outside Mew. Though it was kind of common knowledge on Mew that Ocean Grunge was a self-promotion flood of biblical proportions, and from memory, I'm pretty sure that many on Reddit sussed out strange posting behavior on the Ocean Grunge sub as well. Late 2014 was around the time that Vaporwave was really starting to expand to a wider internet audience. And to these people who were for the first time reading about these weird hipsters slowing down music, Ocean Grunge was just another subgenre with a subreddit and an essentials chart, indistinguishable from the other elusive subgenres like Sega Haze, Signalcore, Utopian Virtual. Two other events legitimized the genre further: Sea of Dogs' release of Store Memories on Business Casual to positive reception in October of 2014, and Frank Javc's How to Make Ocean Grunge tutorial in March 2015.
Once upon a time, Vaporwave totally boned Sea-Punk, and they had a baby together named Ocean Grunge, who happened to be super retro 90s and also Super Nintendo angsty, who was also extremely obsessed with nihilism and statues of Zach Galifianakis with abs.
With these popular pieces of media being new entry points to the genre, Ocean Grunge fans no longer had to interact with its turbulent origin story. Ocean Grunge was free to fade into obscurity as just another weird and mysterious subgenre of Vaporwave. People these days occasionally use the tag on Bandcamp to call back to this weird microgenre era, but it doesn't have a dedicated following the way that MALLSOFT continues to attract. Ocean Grunge occupies a unique spot in the history of Mew microgenres. Through sheer force of will, a few dedicated artists using like Ori Chef tactics spammed their way into legitimacy. Unlike the short-lived flashes of promise and microgenres like Metroco, which died down in less than a week, these Ocean Grunge people plowed through popular opinion and social norms for 6 whole months to accomplish their goal. A good barometer of their recognition being Pad Chennington's 2019 Ocean Grunge video, which does not acknowledge the genre's beginnings, likely because he's none the wiser. If you want a more inside look to this odd time period, take a listen to Sea of Dogs' 2015 interview on the Ozcast. There's a lot of context from their perspective that might clarify some things, but also raises more questions about the murky group responsible for the spam. I hope my recounting the rise of Ocean Grunge doesn't come across as incredulous or condemning. Rather, I think it speaks to how powerful the microgenre framework was at the time, that the promise of notoriety could compel someone to spend basically a part-time job's worth of effort for half a year marketing someone else's iteration of Vaporwave. A common criticism from the cynics is that the microgenres I'm talking about, quote, aren't real. Inspecting this position opens a whole line of inquiry around what constitutes a real genre, whether genres are even meaningful descriptors of music. Just a bunch of shit that, for the most part, I find kind of pedantic and have little patience for. My default position is that people can describe their music however they want, and that the realness of a genre is derived from the buy-in of onlookers. So most of these genres we're talking about, I'm comfortable with referring to them as genres. SLAPROCK, on the other hand, is definitely not a real genre, or at least that's how it started. On August 24th, 2014, OP posts a thread saying that their 14-year-old brother has a school assignment due the next day where they have to research a musical genre and present it to the class. Rather than last-minute scraping Wikipedia for ideas, OP enlists the help of Mew to instead create a fake genre of music that supposedly existed in the 70s and 80s and invent bullshit details around it. Eventually, the Anons converge on SLAPROCK. What follows is fucking hilarious. People come out of the woodwork to outline the history of SLAPROCK. Anons continue to riff off of this opening without missing a beat. You got KVLTWAVE and the Slipping Cryptids with their 3-hour proto-SLAPROCK odyssey Wish Upon a Dish, offshoot genres like Yelp Slap, Slap Metal, Vapor Slap, Japanese supergroup Spring Ing, and their 2011 masterpiece Yellow Trash Slap, which Skarufi gave a 5 out of 5. Influences on hip-hop with the subgenre slap rap pioneered by A-Slap Mob. So fucking stupid. There were album covers, a video from Eddie 504 repurposed as modern slap rock, a subreddit, a Bandcamp, a Wikipedia article that was deleted by a guy named Bonk Warrior, who was then written into slap rock canon as a satanic neo-Nazi defeated by KVLTWAVE in hand-to-hand combat, and of course Slapthany Rocktano made a tweet about the genre. At some point though, slap rock stopped being a hoax and eventually morphed into a full-fledged microgenre. Tons of people were posting tracks. Unfortunately, almost all of these links are dead. The first was posted as a mega link, and supposedly it was recorded at like 40 kilobytes per second. People seem to like it. Someone did attempt to recreate a portion of KVLTWAVE's Wish Upon a Dish album. Here it is. Sounds like Sonic jumping up and down on a spring to the Seinfeld opening. After this album was released on the 26th, SLAPROCK fizzled out. A few half-hearted revival efforts fell apart, the joke was old, and everyone moved on. While the trajectory of slap rock as a hoax genre turned real from the enthusiasm of the participants was novel, ultimately slap rock occupies the same cluster of the microgenre taxonomy as the other joke genres like FRUITPUNK, FATWAVE, and SPOOKYCORE. And that's supported by both the unanimous cooperation in the generals, as well as fond remembrances in later years. Slap rock, potentially even more so than FRUITPUNK, represents a watered-down version of the best that 4chan had to offer, when the chaos of anonymous posting would for a moment be focused toward a singular goal of manifesting some humorous outcome. SPORTSWAVE is a fucking trip, man. On October 12th of 2014, an anonymous user started a thread that would spawn SPORTSWAVE. But this wasn't really a create-your-own microgenre thread like the others. There's not really a name for this, but people would post psychotic music consumption behaviors and then facetiously suggest that you're a loser if you don't do those things, usually accompanied by a funny reaction image. So like the opening post, listening to anything other than laughter playing backwards over the sound of rocks hitting the pavement is exactly what I'm talking about. Or listening to anything other than tinnitus recordings. Well, one Anon comes in and posits, quote, not listening to sports broadcasts from the 90s layered with heavy synths and sounds of the rainforest. Thus begins SPORTSWAVE. The appeal was instant and self-evident. SPORTSWAVE would retain the 90s nostalgia core of the other microgenres, combining that with pensive analog synth work you might find in Boards of Canada, for instance. If you think about it, there has been a sports influence on Vaporwave from the beginning, with Chuck Person's Echo Jams being a reference to the NBA player. Also, Daniel LePatin being a notable Celtics fan. Sports and nostalgia is such a fire mix. I think about watching Drew Bledsoe wearing that bright blue jersey with the Patriots head on the shoulder pads, or the first basketball game I ever watched when Kobe diced up the Pacers in Game 6. Mixing that with lush synths sounds fucking awesome. It would only take 2 hours for a user to upload the first SPORTSWAVE to Vocaroo. Unfortunately, because of the website's scheduled deletion system, this track is lost media. However, we can gather that the attempt justified interest in the new microgenre. The first SPORTSWAVE track from the archive that we do have access to is Sportscast 1985 by Indighost.
Randall told me the Eagles also expect to use him a lot as a punter. Now, we have not heard if any other rebels have been chosen in today's draft. The first 6 picks went like this.
I love this track. It reminds me of some of OPN's early stuff like Russian Mind and Zones Without People. Funny enough, Indighost, who goes by C-Song on YouTube, has recently been doing music review narrations. He made a great video about Music Has the Right to Children. Go check that out. Quickly after Sportscast 1985, an artist, Minty9, made the first SPORTSWAVE album, Sponsored Athletics, which has a hilarious track about a radio broadcaster throwing a fit about Washington Redskins.
I was born at Alexandria Hospital, Lamar. I went to Lake Braddock. I went to Orange Hunt Elementary School. I lived off Seidenstricker Road in Springfield, Virginia. I live in Sunset Woods Court in Burke, Virginia. I went to George Mason University. I'm Northern Virginia. I'm D.C. I bleed it. And you kill.
Once the generals started getting posted, the music multiplied, and within the first 2 days there was a robust Essentials chart that, unlike the OCEANGRUNGE chart, definitely was occupied by distinct artists. Reading through these SPORTSWAVE generals, it's truly striking how amicable the conversation arena was. Even though there was clearly enthusiasm about the budding scene, that enthusiasm was restrained. There was hardly any viraling attempts outside the generals, and conversely, only a few fun police paid the SPORTSWAVE crew a visit in their threads. It didn't feel as opportunistic as DESERTWAVE or pressed to succeed as MetroCo. There wasn't even any overarching philosophy that people were debating or felt constrained by. SPORTSWAVE was just a bunch of chill people making chill music about sports, synths, and rainforests. It seemed like there were so many different paths to take the concept to. Radio broadcasters, coach meltdowns, baseball black metal, Tony Kornhauser core, golf gaze, ping pong pop. The possibilities were endless, until it died. The death of SPORTSWAVE followed a similar trajectory as the other microgenres, in that generals stopped being made after about day 4. Strangely though, on day 3, none other than Sportsthiny Wave Tano made a tweet asking about the microgenre, which is funny because one user suggested that the end goal of SPORTSWAVE should be to get Melon to say SPORTSWAVE on a video, so I guess this was close enough. SPORTSWAVE left a legacy of fun that anonymous posters would fondly look back on in the years to come. It should be reiterated that the relative success of SPORTWAVE as a community, even in the midst of public contempt against forced microgenres like FLASHWAVE and OCEANGRUNGE, could likely be attributed to the fact that SPORTSWAVE didn't start as a microgenre at all. It was birthed in this facetious implying thread, so it didn't begin with the hopes and baggage of the long line of other failed microgenres. It's interesting though that for these microgenres, it seems like the more earnest efforts like MetroCo and DESERTWAVE left a poor taste in people's mouths and reflected the annoying aspects of the microgenre era of the early 2010s, while the farcical efforts like FRUITPUNK and SPOOKYCORE seem to be remembered more positively. And I think that there's an argument to be made that SPORTSWAVE took the best of both worlds, combining the playfulness of an absurd joke genre with the production of a slew of sincere and very competent ambient tracks that evoke the comfiest kind of 90s nostalgia. I do want to close out this entry by highlighting the Indian Wells song Wimbledon 1980 from 2013 as proto-SPORTSWAVE. Fucking incredible. The next 3 items barely qualify as genres since they were made by one person alone, but since they appear in some of the microgenre lists referenced years later, I will describe them for completeness. On November 12th, 2014, someone started a thread with a still from an old Adventures of Tintin comic asking if users have noticed this aesthetic creeping into harsh noise and power electronics. They posted a track from Geyser Bastion's SoundCloud as an example, however the link is dead. One of the users coins TINTINTRONICS in response. The next response is a still from the controversial book Tintin in the Congo, which is notable for its derogatory portrayal of the Congolese and the glorification of colonialism and big game hunting. The rest of the thread contains more extremely questionable caricatures from the Tintin comics and Anons praising Tintins as edgy and based. Afterwards, Tintintronics generals started popping up but barely gained any traction. 3 days later, on the 15th, an artist named Neil Trotter, name taken from the Euro Millions lottery winner, makes an album called Tintintronics, incorporating the racist caricature in his album art. Like the Geyser Bastion track, this album has since been deleted. The pair of Geyser Bastion and Neil Trotter would post their links a few more times in SoundCloud and Bandcamp threads respectively, make references to Tintintronics in threads for other microgenres like OCEANGRUNGE and SPORTSWAVE, but there was no coordination or drive behind the posting. Tintintronics was basically a meme shared by like 5 people at most. However, just a few weeks later, an anonymous poster made a summary of microgenres created by Mew, and likely because of the recent references, included Tintintronics in the list despite the genre having almost no traction. Future microgenre lists would then reference this list, and thus Tintintronics is part of the Mew microgenre canon. Tintintronics was an obscure meme, probably indistinguishable from other niche microgenres that lacked broad appeal, but it was created at the exact right time to be remembered. Fortunately or unfortunately, we will probably never know what it sounded like. The same day that Tintintronics was created, an invent your own genre thread was posted. Far down in the replies, a user posits a new genre, cultwave.
I really want this to happen. Take 1980s and 1970s pop music, speed it up, increase the length of the song via looping, and distort it into hellish, downtuned, lo-fi music, add painfully obvious electronic blast beats. Aesthetics revolve on replacing all U's with V's and replacing all C's with K's, satanic imagery, and mocking black metal.
Cultwave did not receive much attention in this thread, and a general posted that same day only gathered a single reply. Activity seemed to increase in the following 2 days in posted generals. Though many of the YouTube links are now dead, we do have a single reference of what was considered a proto-cultwave track. The song Join the Fire by Seamargle. I think this comment sums it up. However, cultwave had virtually no appeal behind it in these threads, a primary reason for this being that OCEANGRUNGE was referenced within the first 4 replies, potentially by the famous OCEANGRUNGE spam cartel that wanted to starve out other microgenres before they could take off. I had mentioned that in Q3 of 2013, when the DESERTWAVE SPOOKYCORE conflict broke out, outside of the core audiences, general sentiment was that microgenres had overstayed their welcome, and that MetroCo and at the time MALLSOFT were confirmations of the failure of the internet microgenre as a meaningful and lasting framework for cultural dialogue. A year later in Q4 of 2014, during these cultwave threads, people were so fucking sick of this new wave of blatantly forced genres that the only way for cultwave to succeed would have been to enter the regime of monumental annoyance that OCEANGRUNGE occupied. Alas, the cultwave creator got bored and stopped consistently posting about it after a week. The only concrete material to come out of cultwave was this Perspective album cover. Also, someone tried starting a competitor genre, cultwave with a C, but that didn't get very far. In the Tintintronics thread, a user decides they will invent their own microgenre as well. This is their manifesto.
The subgenre is cosmic synth or exosynth. The genre is related to space synth, but mostly use sub 3000 Hz sounds. Songs are longer, slower, and without fantasy samples.
They compiled a few songs into a zip share file, but it is now deleted. The Cosmic Synth poster was incredibly meek and only posted his music a few times that week, expressing regret that the genre was created after cultwave and that Cosmic Synth needed something to distinguish himself from the Berlin school. There were hardly any responses to these posts. However, this was right before the December 1st microgenre poster who included Cosmic Synth on the list. So now I'm forcing all of you to know about it too. To understand ALIENCORE, we first need to talk about aliens and their relevance to online culture. I won't give the full SPV dissertation on this, but the brief version is that in 2013, aliens went through a memification similar to the one skeletons and ghosts went through the year prior with the Too Spooky For You meme. The humor being that the recontextualization of aliens as memes undercuts the threatening aura they're typically portrayed with. Think the fluorescent green blow-up dolls, the one from the X-Files that looks kind of baked, the old dancing alien gif. Just the goofiest depictions of aliens became central to the meme. The text associated with these aliens was LMAO. There's no deeper meaning other than the A portion originating from Spanish-speaking forums. It's just non-sequitur text paired with pictures of aliens. But this formula broke the brains of people around the internet, and mine included. I feel like people tend to age out of those try not to laugh challenges. I know that the Crazy Frog car was a huge trigger for me as a teen that doesn't do anything for me anymore. But something about ALMAO, I'm stuck like this. I'm going to be losing my shit to ALMAO forever. The ALMAO Extreme Collection, the ALMAO Mako Macarena.
To Earth and a silver crumb UFO to probe your ass and see. I'll keep it kangaroo. Gain a boost when I march my man with my bro. Hey, LMAO.
Even when someone refers to aliens as A's, I'm gonna laugh without fail. It's just my cross to bear. The ALMAO fucking A. The ALMAO meme also had some board-specific traction on Mew, with endless discussion about the 2008 album Alien Rap, songs about life on the planet Glump. Also want to shout out this dude Zalian, who I've been listening to since the beginning. He made some dubstep remixes of Sonic and Minecraft music in 2010. Hasn't stopped grinding. What's up, Zay? The ALIENCORE story begins in earnest on November 30th, 2014, when out of the blue, this post shows up on Mew, linking the Bandcamp of a supposed alien named Oxum. Here is the post in its entirety.
Greetings, Earth. I am what you would call an alien to your planet. My name is Auzome and I arrive from a faraway region of the universe. As your species refers to it as to present to you an important work of musical expression from my planet. I belong to an advanced species capable of traveling across the universe within multiple dimensions, manipulating the space-time continuum to explore. We have been in contact with your planet for over 1 million years of Earth time, but we have not yet presented ourselves in the public eye because the shock of the truth of this universe we exist in would cause you all to die of terror. We have been working on a system to cure you of the disease of aging, as you know it, in order to help your species evolve, but we are still a lot of time away from this coming to pass. However, to much controversy amongst my peers in the musical field, I have decided that it is the right time to unveil to you one of my own works. On my planet, it is considered one of the most important and seminal pieces of music ever created, and it is my personal belief that the time is right for me to share it with all of you. Unfortunately, due to your sensory limitations, you cannot experience music in all 11 dimensions yet, and so will never fully grasp the meaning of this work. But I believe that via your ears, you can hear at least a fraction of this music, and you can finally begin to understand our way of life through it, even if only to a small extent. I hope you enjoy, and please donate money if you do, because as a species we sometimes like to pose as humans, and being able to display quantities of the thing you call money helps us blend into everyday life.
Boy, where to start? This post fits the mold of other ARG-style album promos. The first Eco-Virtual album comes to mind. But the Oxum post, it just fucking sends me, dude. Like, what the fuck is this? It's so condescending to humans, the 11-dimensional music. The fact that at the end of it all, they explicitly ask for money. The album itself, E89CX, is like if someone recreated the BBC Radiophonic Workshop tracks for Doctor Who in, like, a demo version of FL Studio. The first 7 responses to Oxum's post were variations of ALMAO. Now, usually these self-promotion efforts are sniffed out right away and shamed, but with Oxum, people were content to play along. The initial thread didn't last long, but a follow-up was quickly posted, with the OP proclaiming ALIENCORE as the defining microgenre of 2015. In this thread, the typical debates around the parameters of ALIENCORE began. And it seems like the single metric was that it's good if it's made by an alien and utter shit if it's human-made. This didn't leave much room for the proliferation of the genre, as Oxum would claim to be the only legitimate alien. But this wouldn't last long. 5 hours after Oxum's album dropped, someone named Apla dropped an EP with a title that was just a bunch of rectangular bars. A half hour later, Kerbajcooks34 made a transmission. Then Hornzak dropped one 10 minutes after. It's entirely possible that these were all Oxum alts, but I believe at least one of these was unique. The next day, the game would change when Kabaksugan would declare war on Oxum for revealing the alien music community to Earth. Their album, which is just a bunch of Unicode question marks, is in my opinion the best thing to come out of ALIENCORE. It's really wonky electronic that kind of reminds me of Bandcamp Attacker. A year later, Kabaksugan's album would make it on the Hard Vapor label, and some Bleach wrote a nice review about it. In the next thread, even more aliens were coming out for the woodwork to share their transmissions. There was such a heterogeneous mix of premises and musical styles. Some people were posting incomprehensible walls of glitch text, others were more open to interacting with the humans. The ALIENCORE genre was turning into an exercise in roleplay, and that separates it from the sillier microgenres like FRUITPUNK and SPOOKYCORE, where in those, people were just cracking themed jokes. Here in ALIENCORE, you had a bunch of Anons legit posing as aliens and communicating with others doing the same. It was like a scaled down version of the Uganda Knuckles phenomenon, and that's fucking hilarious to me. Like 2 years prior, you had suburban teens pretending to be cryptic Japanese corporations from the 90s, and now they've moved on to being A's for attention. Or maybe, the only proven case of extraterrestrial contact took place on Mew, and the A's really did need our patronage, who knows. Unfortunately, the remaining threads did not receive the same level of buy-in as the first two, and ALIENCORE, like all other microgenres, died after 4 days. Part of the cause was a link to OCEANGRUNGE, but there was also kind of a communication error in that ALIENCORE was already a well-established subgenre of metal, so people started switching over to exotransmission, but the genre was already toast by that point. But for those 4 days, ALIENCORE was one of the most immersive, prolific, and exciting microgenres originating from 4chan. What started as an above-average viral marketing thread for a single album ballooned into a full-fledged musical role-playing community. Rest in peace, ALIENCORE. FARTCORE, as I can tell, is less of a genre and more of a derisive descriptor for albums people thought were bad. Although some Anons reference FARTCORE as an actual musical technique where people make covers of songs just using farts. So maybe there really was a FARTCORE movement back in the day. I'm guessing it's just a joke though. However, the pinnacle of FARTCORE occurred on October 9th of 2015, when an anonymous user posted a SoundCloud track where they arranged 235 of their farts recorded throughout the year. This thread is a fucking all-timer, no doubt, but the All My Farts track didn't do much to breathe life into the genre. FARTCORE remains an occasional Mew insult to this day. It should be noted though, on Bandcamp, if you search FARTCORE, there are some albums that come up. My favorite is a single from 2021 titled Guy Farts on a Dog, which is a minute and a half of a foreboding percussion sample leading into a surprise at the end.
Fuck you.
Tech noir is a genre of film which blends elements of science fiction and noir, best represented by Blade Runner. Tech noir is also the name of two synthwave songs, one by Perturbator and the other by Gunship. On October 14th, 2015, an anonymous user started a thread with an illustration of Sean Young from Blade Runner, asking the following:
Is there such a thing as Neo-40s music? I need some tech noir.
Right away, users were intrigued. Although there was confusion regarding what would actually constitute tech noir, it seemed like people were gravitating towards some synthesis of atmospheric ambient, like van and jazz elements. A user named Indecibel made a first pass at a tech noir track. Another user, Rough Sleeping, offered their interpretation. A third track was made by a SoundCloud artist, Jim Leltronica, that was well received. There really isn't much more to say about tech noir. The genre had 3 well-populated threads, after which participation was virtually non-existent. The cycle of attention towards tech noir is not dissimilar from basically any of the short-lived microgenres we've reviewed thus far. However, I think 2 factors differentiate tech noir from the pack. First is its temporal distance from the others, starting a year after OCEANGRUNGE and 3 years after the initial spam of Vaporwave. At this time, microgenres were far enough removed from board consciousness that there wasn't the knee-jerk resistance to the idea of yet another microgenre cropping up that there would have been a year prior. Second, the original impetus for the creation of tech noir was not to create just another arbitrary genre like Metroco or DESERTWAVE. The tech noir OP just wanted to hear some more Blade Runner type shit, and Anons naturally flocked to the vibe. And beyond the inspo posted on the threads, the original tag tracks that came out of tech noir were actually pretty cool. PetitTube is a French website that launched in 2011. The site crawls through YouTube and displays videos with less than 20 views, especially these days where YouTube's algorithm spoon feeds users with typically already popular videos. PetitTube can be an interesting vehicle to explore some real obscure shit. However, I've personally found PetitTube's algorithm to be a bit limited. I usually get homes for sale, Indian TikToks, children accidentally uploading videos on their parents' tablets. It's pretty boring. Occasionally, you do get sent down some wild rabbit holes. All I've found through the site is of this dude passed out in a plastic chair in the middle of a street while a small dog licks his face and what sounds like Algerian pop music blaring in the background. But a lot of the time, you get this very uneasy feeling about watching these videos that feel almost too private to be on YouTube. On January 25th, 2016, a user begins a thread declaring the birth of a new genre called Deep Internet. They also post links to 4 different YouTube videos, the most alarming being this one on a channel called Chronos for Life Jurassic Park, where the user claimed their mother was being harassed by YouTube since they were removing her tribute videos to Jurassic Park, or something like that. The premise right away captures the attention of other anonymous posters who use PetitTube to share other unsettling videos with low view counts. And this was the dual promise of Deep Internet. Not only was it a microgenre with a simple reproducible premise, but the aesthetic of cryptic undiscovered corners of the internet was so visceral that it facilitated discussion on its own. The mystery behind Chronos for Life in particular fueled the first few hours of discussion, especially when they made a response video during this interval after noticing the view count spike on the first video. Also, their music selection was fucking fresh. It turns out that the Chronos channel was actually a whole interconnected ARG developed by DJ Roswell. Check out videos from Blame It on Jorge and Nexpo on the subject. The first Deep Internet track was a remix of one of Chronos' videos made by Radio Muerte. However, the defining Deep Internet release in this first thread was an album by Quiz MVE titled Raw Internet Music, which essentially collected untreated samples from these PetitTube finds. One track might be a stock piano piece where a narrator describes a property for sale, the next audio from someone's cell phone rustling in their pocket. It's a very eerie listen that perfectly captures the PetitTube experience. I highly recommend checking it out.
Otra vez. Haz otra vez. Oye, ¿por qué te sale a ti y a mí no?
Porque si eres light es crazy.
Claro, entonces te dicen en no le cambies la posición. ¿Dónde?
Like I said, unlike in these other microgenres where from inception there's this imperative to quickly create music to demonstrate the genre's credibility, with Deep Internet, the Roswell ARG was more than enough to keep Anons engaged for several threads, boosting the time horizon of the genre. Generals were still going strong by the 5th day when the compilation Erratus or Bust dropped. Participation was super high too, and the artists were taking the concept in all different directions. Quiz MVE had a curatorial approach. Window Listener, a guy that I actually collabed with at one point, he was cool. He had a noisy glitch interpretation of the source material. Zero Deer was making washed out soundscapes that had similarities to early TKX Vault stuff. IT was working with a more layered field recording sound. There wasn't a fixation on adhering to a particular sound. The only rule was that you couldn't sample videos with more than 20 views. And for the first week, it was working perfectly. But some of the threads still pulled 100+ responses and new artists who missed the first wave. One that I listened to quite a bit back then was someone who went by Torrent My Pets. I especially liked the album with the cute little frog on the cover. Even though threads started becoming fewer and farther between, activity within the threads were still above a moderate threshold. People were still engaged with the concept, the mystery behind Kronos and Erratus, even making new tracks. Occasional revival threads in the following years would find new audiences that resonated with internet mysteries and data dumps as a music genre. The popular Erratus videos from Nexpo and Blame It on Jorge would further bring attention to this weird network of sound collage artists on Mew. With the rise of internet mystery, lost media, ARG explained style content, I think Deep Internet is here to stay. Maybe not as an active scene, but at least as an oft-revisited memory representing the audio antithesis of corporate social media. I want to finish off this entry with a poignant quote from Morpheus Lune, the creator of Quiz MVE, about their perspective on the allure of Deep Internet.
We live in a special age in which it is possible to record every second of our lives and upload it for everyone to see. The needed investment of resources for doing that is way less than the most valuable resource out there, time, which is needed to actually watch all of those recorded lives. The internet has become host of 1 million lifetimes and more. Those lives will live on for as long as the servers hosting them stay online. Browsing through those forgotten archives makes one experience these lives again. It's possible to find entire channels with days and weeks worth of uploads of people sharing their lives and thoughts. I have found the neologism sonder be an appropriate feeling for digging through obscure videos. Someone somewhere found it at some time important to record a certain something and you are now witnessing it, maybe even as the first and possibly last person ever. For me that is a very profound feeling of a unique connection. It makes me feel human in a way other things don't. It makes me feel big and small at the same time. It makes me feel insignificant and important, belonging and disoriented, all of it are chance encounters lasting only a few seconds. For me that is the profound beauty of Deep Internet when viewed as an approach to experiencing human life in the digital age.
Fucking Christ, that took forever. There you go. Those are 20 microgenres invented on Mew. Putting all these stories together, I hope you'll appreciate how the microgenre paradigm fit into the culture of music creation during that period. I think history will look back on 2010's internet microgenres with bewilderment. Maybe not Vaporwave, since that managed to evolve beyond its roots as an ironic fad into a decade-defining artistic style, but like Witch House, Chillwave, and C-Punk especially. Scenes that would barge in on manic hype trains, harbingers of the promise of the internet facilitating a new era of musical community building, only to literally disappear months or even weeks later. later. These ephemeral scenes at their peak were praised as innovative, but after the bubble inevitably burst, they were revealed as shallow exercises in futility. They were never going to last, never going to have a detectable impact on popular culture. In some sense, these 4chan microgenres reflected the worst aspects of the internet microgenre phenomena. Most were created with no artistic intent, rather were devised to mimic the infinitesimal hype cycles of their predecessors. Rule establishment and infighting would commence before the first piece of music would drop. Microgenre evangelists were incredibly opportunistic, manipulating public opinion by gaming the anonymous nature of the board. Supporters were bandwagoners and proud of it. Contributing musicians were so shallow and insecure in their abilities and artistic sensibilities that they were more comfortable operating within boxes designed to be naive facsimiles of pre-existing media. Anons who were so obstinate in the face of criticism, really in the face of reality, that their made-up scene was fucking stupid and would never last, would ditch the microgenre they spent the past 2 days defending and never mention it again. This system was rotten from the core, built to fail. But I don't think that captures the whole story. It's part of it, sure, but a purely cynical perspective misses the intangible magic of it all. It's easier with hindsight to conceptualize a bunch of suburban white kids slowing down 80s pop music to participate in an internet fad, or put on a botched East African accent and pester anime nerds on VR chat, or convince each other that cartoon 8 pictures are going to make them rich. But if you just suspend disbelief for a second, imagine what it would be like if ghostly Japanese multinational corporations emerged from the digital ether to serve up distorted shopping plaza recordings, or if aliens really did decide to transmit 11-dimensional music over Bandcamp, or I guess if you were at a tropical rave that served Welch's fruit snacks and freeze pops. For at least a few hours sometime in the past 10 years, these things felt possible. On Mew, if you got lucky or were sociopathically consistent, you could essentially roleplay an entire community into existence. Sure, at its worst, the microgenre fad was just a bunch of greedy attention-seeking anons coming up with the most contrived derivative shit to leech off the groundwork laid by actual pioneers like OPN and DJ Internet. But at its best, being in one of those threads where everyone else bought into the concept felt like you were at ground zero of the next big internet meme, that any visual or audio contributions you made could be etched in history. And I mean, shit, if fucking C-Punk could get picked up by the New York Times and be appropriated by major celebs like Azalea Banks and Rihanna, who's to say that, like, Katy Perry won't start repping FRUITPUNK outfits? Oh, wait. Now, I could wrap this project up as a purely documentative effort, but I'd be lying if I said that the microgenre era wasn't formative in my own development as a musical artist. So in the spirit of flagrant self-promotion, in honor of the artists featured in this video, I'd like to share a few of my own tracks that drew influence from the microgenre sludge of Mew. While TONEFIELD was never an acute influence for any of my material, my early stuff was built from MATLAB scripts and shared the same algorithmic aleatoric basis. This track, G3R1, may as well be a TONEFIELD track with time modulation. I was enamored with SPORTSWAVE when it emerged, and though I wasn't making music at the time, I had always wanted to make a SPORTSWAVE-themed Vaporwave album. A few years ago, I lifted sample from this VHS recording I had of the 1988 New York City Marathon. If you're an SPV OG, the video of Joan Benoit Samuelson running into that kid is from that race. In fact, the figure on the cover is actually a graphic used by the broadcast to list her injuries going into the race. Anyways, I made this album, released it on cassette through Seicomart, who did an awesome job, and I was really proud of it. I thought I was pulling these mega obscure samples. A year later, I was listening to Tangerine Dream's album Optical Race and recognized like 5 of the tracks from their broadcast. It's still cool to realize that someone in production at NBC had to choose the bumper music and probably pick that album because of the running theme. Lately, I've been going down into my unfinished basement, putting on an alien mask and streaming no input sets to Twitch. You know, like any other normal, well-adjusted adult. Because of the alien themes and the glitchy output of the setup, I wanted to pay homage to my favorite 13-dimensional musician by naming a track after Kabakugan. After around 5 years of making entirely algorithmic music, I started experimenting with rhythms and sequencing. So because I was a noob, what I would do is I would open Audacity, lay down a click track, and then grab percussive samples from songs in my library and blind sequence them. Basically throw it into a project and refuse to check my progress until I'd reach a threshold number of unique samples, usually like 50 or 100. The song sounded like absolute shit, but absolute shit in a way that a defective AI might have been responsible for the arrangement, so I guess that was cool. I got the idea to do this with Petit Tube samples and make a deep internet track like 3 years too late. There's a moment I really like at the end of this song where I take a sample of this girl rapping at a youth church service in Florida and place that over one of those sterile stock instrumentals in a house for sale video. It was one thing to be in those deep internet threads and hear the art coming out of it, but to actually go through the process of digging up obscure samples and recontextualize them was surprisingly rewarding. Maybe I should do this again.
I'm a Y-O-U-T-H for the fresh, yeah. Dedicated to him, he has my life, yeah. Y-O-U-T-H for the fresh, yeah. Dedicated to him, he has my life, yeah.
In conclusion, Mew microgenres were derivative bullshit, but the ones that didn't take themselves seriously were hilarious to be a part of. Putting these into a tier list, I'd put Cosmic Synth, Cult Wave, Tintintronics, and TREDGESTOMP as D tier. In C tier, OCEANGRUNGE, WATERBASS, FARTCORE, FLASHWAVE. B tier, TECHNOIR, FATWAVE, DESERTWAVE, TONEFIELD. A tier, FRUITPUNK, SPOOKYCORE, METROCO, SLAPROCK. And S tier, MALLSOFT, SPORTSWAVE, ALIENCORE, Deep Internet. Release your shit always, because you never know what your music might mean to other people.